Good evening. I'm Sarah Holland, President of the Plymouth, New Hampshire Rotary Club and Meet the Candidate event here on Pemmy Baker Television. We'll be hearing from candidates running for a variety of offices of which you will be voting on Tuesday, November 6th, only 12 short days away. This evening's format is live and will include 4 distinct segments: State Senate District 2 candidates, County Commissioner District 3 candidates, House District 8 candidates, and a combined House District 9 and 17 candidates. Each candidate will give a brief introduction, and all candidates will be asked a series of 4 questions. We will remain on air between each segment as our candidates transition on and off screen. Valerie Scarborough will be here to be our timekeeper this evening. She will show her wrap it up paddle with 30 seconds left. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our host, Pemmy Baker Television, for making this evening possible and for providing nonpartisan platform for the greater Plymouth community. Now, in Rotary, we have a 4-way test for things we think, say, or do. A moral code for personal and professional development relationships. This test can be applied almost into any aspect of life, including tonight's discussions. The 4 questions one must ask themselves are: is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? I ask that all candidates keep the 4-way test in mind this evening as we move forward with this live discussion. Tonight's first segment is going to be the State Senate District 2, which the state of New Hampshire has 24 districts, 24 senators, each having a 2-year term. District 2 is 15 towns. It includes Haverhill, Wentworth, Ellsworth, Dorchester, Plymouth, Holderness, Ashland, Bridgewater, Alexandria, Orange, Center Harbor, Danbury, Wilmot, Tilton, and New Hampton. Our candidates this evening are Senator Bob Giuda, who is the incumbent, and Bill Bolton. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So first, I'd like you each to start with a 1.5-minute remarks, just to welcome, share who you are, and a little bit about yourselves. So Senator Bob Giuda, would you be able to start first, please?
Thank you. Minor correction, it's 27 towns and 3 counties.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm State Senator Bob Giuda. I've been serving for 2 years, meeting the needs of our people, institution, and businesses. As a freshman member of the Senate, for the first time in state history, the Senate crafted the state's budget, and I was on the team that did so. We crafted a budget that met the needs that were projected to us by the people during the campaigning 2 years ago, primarily substance abuse and opioids, mental health, education, and education funding. And we drafted a budget that met those objectives, significantly increased spending, as well as reducing taxes. We reduced taxes on every homeowner and every business in the state by eliminating the electricity consumption tax. We reduced the business enterprise and business profits taxes, which when combined with federal tax cuts, brought $100 million of extra revenue to the state, $60 million of which we sent back to towns to help relieve their property taxes in a number of forms. I'm married. I have a wonderful wife, 3 wonderful children. We have a beautiful home in Warren. I served as a Marine Corps pilot in Vietnam era and subsequent. I've served in my local community in a number of positions, and as well as a 3-term stint in the State House as a legislator. It's an honor and a privilege to serve. We've done a great job with the state budget and with the state meeting the state's priorities. I look forward to serving you again for another 2 years.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Bolton.
Hi, I'm Bill Bolton. I'm a long-term Plymouth resident. My wife Denise and I have had 4 kids in Plymouth, and they all went through public school system. I've been a long-term, actually retired state employee. I retired from the state 9 years ago. I worked for the state for 30 years. And I started out in public health. I ended up becoming the director of the Division of Vital Records Administration. Initially that was in public health. It got moved over to the Secretary of State's office, and I retired from that 9 years ago. Since then, I've been an at-home IT implementation manager for 2 software products that went out to all states in the nation as well as all the territories. And primarily to share data between states and also with the National Center for Health Statistics. Since then, since working at home, I was able to provide more of my time to help our community. So I became a select board member and I'm currently the Select Board Chair. I've also been on the Planning Board and different boards and commissions in the town. And I've given my life to public service, and I'd like to continue that as a senator. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both for that. So a quick icebreaker question. What book are you each reading right now or have most recently finished? Mr. Bolton, would you like to go first?
Sure, and at the risk of pandering, the current book that I'm trying to read, which I haven't been able to read too much for pleasure in the past several months, but it's The Lion of the Senate of New Hampshire by Lou D'Alessandro.
There you go. Excellent. Senator Giuda?
Yeah, I'm reading a book called Unbroken. It's an incredible story of a heroic warrior during the Second World War who was shot down and survives Japanese prison camp. He survives like 40 days or so out in the ocean, but truly a testimony to the human spirit and the will to survive, how to overcome obstacles that are seemingly insurmountable. It's an incredible story.
Excellent. I always love a good book recommendation. All right, we're going to jump right in with question 1. And this is going to start with Senator Giuda. Why are you running, and how would you do things differently than your opponent?
Okay, I'm running because we've got a really good track set for the state. We're raising revenues like crazy. We're addressing the priorities that the people have asked us to address during the course of the last campaign and the course of this campaign. I'm running because I have a wealth of experience, because of a lifetime spent traveling the world, serving as an FBI agent, serving as an airline captain from which I retired, as well as my public service in the town. My family drives my will to serve because I think that the future that we shape is most important, and the future that Bill and I see are entirely different. I see a future in which government provides opportunity, not determines outcomes. That is a very fundamental difference. We're meeting the criteria, the problems that the state is having very effectively with funding as well as programs. And for that reason, rather than increasing programs for the sake of doing so, we're making absolutely sure, in my position on the Senate Finance Committee, that whatever we might implement, in fact, is implemented wisely, without wasting money, and ensuring that we have the ability to pay for programs, such as family medical leave. Family medical leave is something that I support. The plan as proposed by the Democrat bill would have gone bankrupt within 4 years. It would have left a $160 million bill on the state's table, and it would have left the families that depend on it in the lurch. And so for those reasons, I'm continuing to work on family medical leave with insurance companies, with the governor's office, with Department of Employment Security, and with unions who are now looking to negotiate potentially, again, not in our bailiwick, but they're looking to negotiate a contract that may include that and enable the rest of the citizens of the state to participate in a voluntary non-government program.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton.
Hi, I'm running to basically because I have served the public for most of my life, and I want to continue to do so as a senator. And I'm also of the frame of mind that I'd like to create opportunity as well. So I hate to differ, but we also differ on a couple of other fairly significant things as well. One of which is Medicaid, or insurance. I am for expanded Medicaid and providing health care to lower income people. My opponent voted against Medicaid expansion, and Medicaid expansion both assures that everyone shall receive public health care, and also there are 3,000 people in my district that currently have Medicaid as a primary health care, and I want to see that continue. And in fact, there's 52,000 statewide that also are utilizing Medicaid expansion. It's also going to be a very valuable tool in the treatment of opioid addiction. So it's a tool that cannot be lost. The other thing we differ with is as far as education. And my opponent voted in favor of vouchers. I oppose that. I'm a chair of the select board, and I don't want to see an uncertainty regarding the type of revenue, or at least the number of children that are enrolled in schools. And vouchers are a threat to at least our public school system. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, on to question 2. What political issues have you been working on in the last 2 years? We'll start with you, Mr. Bolton.
I think primarily the thing that's occupied my time most politically has been my opposition to Northern Pass and the work that we did within our town in that regard. And initially, I've attended a lot of hearings on Northern Pass. Went to the SEC several times, and our town was in the path of the underground portion of Northern Pass, and it was going to go down our main street. So both as a town, we had the significant threat that was going to be probably closing 2 to 3 businesses estimated. And so there was a deep concern for our town. There's also a deep concern about the lack of respect for New Hampshire and our environment and our beautiful mountains, which needed to be preserved. So I did get involved also with going forward with a rights-based ordinance, and I worked with CELDEF and with the concerned citizens of Plymouth in order to put together a draft of a rights-based ordinance that was accepted by the town at a special town meeting. And that, in concert with the town's testimony, was able to convince the SEC that this was not worth going forward with. And I'm going to watch that until it turns red, and then and now it's at the Supreme Court level, and when it comes back, I want to make sure that the makeup of the SEC remains the same so that this project is killed. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Bolton. Senator Giuda.
Yeah, a number of priorities. Let's talk about Medicaid expansion. My vote against that was not because I don't believe the indigent deserve health care. My vote against that was because the working families, the middle-class working families, are suffering premium increases of 50 to 60% every year, and deductibles of anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000, so that middle-class working families are ultimately out of pocket $20,000 to $25,000 before 1 penny of insurance money comes back. We have to stop that. Medicaid expansion is making it worse. With respect to education, our schools are not doing a good job, according to the Department of Education's own website. 66% of our 11th graders cannot reach proficiency in math, and 46% fail to reach proficiency in literacy. 99% graduate, and we hang our hat on that statistic. But if you talk to all the businesses out there, those that are graduating are not competent in skills. They're spending 6 months to a year in either college or junior college to remediate the failures of the high school to educate them to an adequate level. I worked as well on Northern Pass, and the effect, I testified and wrote letters to the SEC as well as to the Massachusetts version of the SEC. Biomass was a big one. I led the charge to override the governor's veto of the biomass bills, Senate Bill 365 and 446. By leading that charge, we saved 1,000 jobs in the forest industry and the ancillary jobs that flow from that for at least 3 years. That doesn't eliminate the problems that they face, but it gives them a lease on life to try to come up with some solutions. So that's what I'm about, the solutions to problems that are thorny and complex. I think we've done a good job as Republicans and as a senator, and I look forward to continuing.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so this is going to come back to you first, Senator Giuda. On the ballot, there are 2 questions pertaining to the amendments to the New Hampshire State Constitution. Question 1, if passed, this amendment would allow taxpayers to have legal standing to challenge a governmental action in court without having to prove they were personally affected. On question 2, which was approved 235 to 96 in the House and 15 to 9 in the Senate, just qualifying for the supermajority needed to be placed on the ballot. If passed, this amendment would change the way courts balance governmental interests in gaining access to personal information versus the nature and degree of intrusion on an individual's privacy rights. How would you vote on these 2 amendments and why? Yeah,
I'm supporting both those amendments. Our government at the state level is significantly tilted in the favor of government versus the citizen. The citizen should be able to seek a redress of grievances because of a court ruling that said we don't have standing. That has stopped. And so I will support that, and of course the second one as well. Fairly self-evident to, if you will, elevate the rights of citizens to a scale that would enable them to challenge the options of government.
Excellent, thank you. Candidate Bolton?
Wow, I'd oppose both. And I'd oppose both because the first one regarding the taxpayers have legal standing. I mean, the taxpayer can always bring suit against the town regardless. And I think this actually would invite frivolous lawsuits. And being the chair of the select board, I think we would be kind of gun shy as far as looking to promote new projects and the effect of the expense of that. And you would think that the town governing body, the townspeople, when they vote on a budget, it would suffice to be adequate proof that some things are needed that might increase cost. And if someone were to challenge that, it would bring frivolous lawsuits and more added expense to towns to defend those issues. So I prefer to be in opposition to that. Regarding the privacy, I was the director of the Division of Vital Records Administration, State Registrar, and we oversaw the release of all sorts of private information to people that demonstrated a need, or at least a right to have those records. And this included the federal government as well. So Social Security Administration was getting downloads of data for individuals that gave permission to allow them to issue certificates. So I think that two things. It'll be a threat to those statutes that are already in law that would then be negated due to this amendment. And I have great concern about that. The other thing is this bill was actually contained in a consent calendar that the House voted on. And it seemed like it's not proper procedure to have a bill that needed a supermajority to be contained in a consent calendar when they voted on a bulk thing of bills versus taking it out and actually voting on the merits of that particular bill. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Senator Giuda, would you like a chance to rebut?
Sure. This is about a court stepping in and saying that citizens don't have standing and seeking redress against the government. Okay, and that's really what the problem is. When the courts start legislating, okay, and denying rights that were hitherto in existence, we're supposed to be the masters of government. And when you're denied the opportunity to take government to task for issues which are questionable, and I can think of several, having chaired the Commission on Right to Know reform, numerous issues where towns or school boards are wrongly withholding information. Taxpayers can't get information. If they seek to sue based on the actions, they were denied by this court ruling. So I'm about making sure that government is accountable. And I think that those two amendments will certainly go in that direction.
Excellent. Thank you both. Okay, so we are at the end of our time. I would like to give both of you a chance to issue some closing remarks. Candidate Bolton, if you would like to start first.
Sure. Again, I've had a lifetime of public service, and I would appreciate that that would be convincing enough. I also, I feel that people probably do sense a difference of the candidates, and it's kind of apparent. So there's definitely a true choice in this, and I would hope that my experience in both public health and serving the community would weigh very heavily in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Giuda?
Thank you. It's been an honor to serve, and I would look forward to continuing to do so. The priorities that the public has asked us to take care of, we have addressed. We have a budget that's in line with no new taxes and new fees. We need to keep the Republicans in charge, because the last time the Democrats were in charge, it was 100 new taxes and fees and an $800 million deficit. We've done it the other way. We make sure that we spend responsibly. We make sure that we address the issues. Democrats voted against the budget that added $20 million and 60 beds for mental health, that added $74 million for opioid addiction problems, that added $57 million for other issues that were of importance to the public. And so we are solving the problems. We are taking care of the budget. We are reducing taxes. We're seeing the income to the state increase. Remember that we sent back $60 million to towns to reduce your property taxes. Those taxes are the responsibility of the town when you vote at town meeting and school district meeting. The state picked up more of its obligations than it has in a very long time. And we're solving problems left to us by Democratic administrations. We're doing a great job moving ahead. I'd like to be able to continue doing that so that we can, again, serve our institutions, our businesses, and our people, so that opportunity prevails. We increase our standard of living. We assist our people to do better for their lives. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you to Senator Giuda and candidate Bolton for being here with us this evening and sharing their passion for serving the communities of Plymouth, of New Hampshire. And if you'd like to view this segment after this evening, it will be replaying on Pemmy Baker Television as well as the Pemmy Baker Television YouTube channel. And don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 6th, only 12 days away. Stay tuned. We have the Grafton County Commissioner District 3 candidates coming up next. Thank you. Second segment, as long as everyone's ready out back. This is Grafton County Commissioner District 3, correct? Okay. And again, this is a 2-year term, right? Okay. And there are Grafton County. Yes. I'm being very careful because I screwed up the last one.
That's okay.
And you're both running for District 2, which is 3?
District 3.
Oh, geez.
District 3.
See? I messed up my numbers. And you have how many towns?
About 15.
Okay.
15 towns.
17. Okay.
Somewhere in here.
Excellent. 17. That's what I have on my list, so I don't know. So I have Alexandria, Ashland, Bridgewater, Bristol, Campden, Canaan, Dorchester, Ellsworth, Grafton, Groton, Hebron, Holderness, Orange, Plymouth, Rumney, Warren, Wentworth.
That sounds about
Did I
right.
miss any?
It's pretty good.
We'll find out later. Someone's going to
Someone will
tweet
call
it,
in.
right? Okay, so again, I'm Sarah Holland, and I'm the current Plymouth Rotary President, and I'm the moderator this evening. We have Omer Ahern Jr., who is the incumbent candidate for the Grafton County Commissioner District 3, and Marcia Morris. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
All right. So we are going to start with opening remarks. It's going to be a minute and a half to each of you, and we have Valerie over there with her wand. She's going to keep you on time, and we're going to start with Omer.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Omer Ahern Jr., and I am presently serving as the District 3 Grafton County Commissioner. I come to my service as the County Commissioner basically having lived and worked in a county environment here in New Hampshire since my mom and dad, Omer and Rosa Ahern, were the co-administrators of the Sullivan County Nursing Home down in Unity. My dad was also the county jailer, and my dad was also the farm and woodlands manager. And growing up under the training of my mom and dad, I get to hear them talk an awful lot about what county government does and how important it is to the people. And with my training as an attorney, as a family law lawyer, as a estate planning attorney, and as a real estate attorney, all of these things have given me the experience to do the job that needs to be done here in Grafton County. I believe that over the last 30 or so years, the county commissioners in Grafton County have failed to manage the county operations properly, therefore causing very high increases in taxes to the taxpayers. So I've been working to find ways to bring in more money to the county, save money to the county taxpayers, and still provide that outstanding nursing home care that we provide, and to provide the care at the House of Correction for the inmates that are sentenced by our courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Morris?
My name is Marcia Morris, and I think a lot of people know me as a journalist. I was the local newspaper editor and a political reporter for about the 17 towns that comprise the District 3 for Grafton County Commissioner. So I know those towns well and the people in them, and I love them. But what a lot of people don't know about me is what I did before I came to New Hampshire, which was a professional training in political science. So I studied negotiation, decision theory, comparative policy analysis at the very highest levels. And my expertise is in mediation and conflict resolution. I have a certificate of community mediator certificate from Harvard Law School mediation program. And so not only did I study conflict resolution in political processes, but I actually learned how to do it. And it's very different, but it's very important to know how to do both things. And I think those skills of being able to bring people together at a table with the difference of opinion and build consensus across a conflict line, we need more of that in our political process. So that's one of the reasons why I'm running, and I hope those skills are useful in this particular capacity.
Excellent. Thank you both. All right. So I'm going to throw out your icebreaker question for this segment, and we're going to start with you, Candidate Morse. If you could have one talent that you do not currently possess, what would it be?
Immediately it just pops into my, I just have to say it, I wish I could sing. I think other people who have lived around me wish I could sing too. I just can't, and it's just really important to have a mode of expression that you can enjoy. It's just not something that's ever going to happen in my life, so music.
Thank you. And Omer?
I wish I could do more with technology. I'm a Luddite, and it's not a religion. It's someone who has a hard time with technology. I'm a tree farmer. I have a certified tree farm here in Plymouth that's been part of the Ahern, or been in the Ahern family since 1897. And you know, my favorite tool is a chainsaw. And but in this age of computers and cell phones and Twitters and things, you know, I'm at a loss when it comes to those things. But I do like paper, as you can see. I have paper with me, and that's what I rely on a lot. And that's what I wish I had a little bit more talent in, is dealing with technology and being able to use technology more effectively.
Excellent. Thank you both. All right, we're going to jump in with question 1, and this is going to go to you, candidate Ahern. Why are you running, and how would you do things differently than your opponent?
I am running because, as an attorney dealing with business people and dealing with families that have to pay a lot in taxes, I'm trying to find an area where, in public service, where I can use the talents and the learning from my mom and dad and my law experience to work in county government to reduce the cost of county government. One of the issues that I've seen coming, and this is my second term as the Grafton County Commissioner, is basically county government in New Hampshire is for 2 major purposes. Number 1, providing a nursing home for our elderly, and number 2, to provide correctional facility, the pretrial confinement in the jail and the house of correction for those who are sentenced. And we also have a farm. And historically, the farm is what fed the people in the nursing home and fed the people in the Department of Corrections. The farm has not been utilized as a resource to help to pay for the cost. For example, we have about a $210,000 food budget at the House of Correction. And if we were doing more with the farm, we could significantly reduce that cost. And I'm constantly looking for ways in order to reduce the cost of county government and to save taxpayer dollars and still provide the services that we need to provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Morris?
Why am I running? Well, the first reason is to give you a choice. It's important when you get to the poll that you get to have a choice. And I think we have enough differences between us that you will have that. That's important. I'm running because I think county government is really important. It flies under the radar a lot because it is the smallest portion of our tax bills. And so people don't pay attention the way Omer does. But it's very important. The correctional facility is incredibly important. The nursing home is very important. It's where we take care of the people who are the most vulnerable in our county, and they matter a great deal to me. So county government is actually fascinating. I love it. If you look across the United States, much of the innovation that comes in terms of dealing with some of the crises that we're facing come at the county government level, and nobody's paying attention, but I'm paying attention. And I think it's an innovative sector. I also have a tremendous amount of respect for the people who have been running the facility up there for the last many years. So I feel like it's really important for us to support them, and that is another thing that I really want to do. So I think, did I answer?
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yes, would you like to rebut?
There's a difference between the management style of the county commissioners and the folks that are on the front lines there. And it's up to the commissioners to set the policies. Unfortunately, there's a lot of policies up there that aren't even in writing. So our employees don't know what the policies are, and that creates some issues. I just feel that the county commissioners have to do a better job of setting the agenda, managing, and doing what needs to be done so that the employees, the department heads, know what it is that's expected of them. So that when a budget is going to be prepared, the department heads need to be told, we want to have a level budget. Not we're going to live with a 5 or 6% increase in taxes. No, that's not fair to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to you. What political issues have you each been working on in the last 2 years? And Commissioner, Candidate Morris, we'll start with you.
Okay. I'm going to start by saying that I haven't been political enough in the last 2 years, which is another reason why I'm running. The issue that is foremost in my mind and in my heart is what we're calling the opioid crisis, but which I think here in New Hampshire really is a community mental health care crisis. and an addictions crisis. So I have spent an awful lot of time not being political, trying to gather my own resources and the resources of other people in the community to address some of this issue and the needs of the kids who are literally dying in the streets. They are detoxing in cars in the Walmart parking lot. They are really suffering. And not only the kids are suffering, but their families are suffering. So I've spent an awful lot of time taking kids to emergency rooms, bringing them to court, make sure they show up, doing anything I could think of. And what I realize is this is a huge problem, bigger than any one of us, groups of us. This is a generational problem that we're facing. And the county, I want you to know, is pretty much been on the forefront at the jail, at the correctional facility, in the alternate sentencing program with community corrections. They are doing the things that are actually making a difference. So if a parent comes to me and says, oh no, my child has just been arrested, I feel terrible, part of me says, I'm not so sure that's the worst thing that could happen to them in New Hampshire at this time. There's a lot of good work being done at the county level, and I want to continue to support it and expand that work.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Ahern?
Politics is not what I'm doing. Public service is what I'm doing. And the things that Marcia has just talked about, yes, I've been involved with that, making sure that these things happen. We have a new program at the Department of Corrections called the FIRM, program FIRRM, and that is to work with new inmates, those who have been charged with issues that are substance abuse related. These are the things that, yes, this is what county government should be doing. But there's a whole host of other things that seems to be distracting to the county commissioners over the years. Statutorily, what I can see, the main thing that we should be doing in county government is the nursing home, providing that care for our elderly, and providing for the needs of those people that get involved with the law through the Department of Corrections. And part of my job is to, how do we make the funds that are going to be available? If we're wasting money, if we're not making use of the resources that we have, then we need to develop policies and do the things that need to be done. And that's what I've been trying to do in trying to bring the farm up and provide more food for the House of Correction, to bring in new enterprises, agriculture. For example, the dairy beef cow operation. We have the UNH Cooperative Extension folks up there that can give us some good ideas on how we can make better use of the farm resources that we have up there.
Good job, Omer. I'm staying on time, but that's a good lead-in for our next question, and that will go to you first, and that's, what changes would you propose to the county budget?
We have to, the commissioners at the beginning have to tell the department heads that we want to have a level funded or reduced tax burden on our taxpayers. And then we can, I believe we can rely on these department heads to do that. If you look at last year's budget, there was a lot of extra money that wasn't spent. And so it's incumbent upon the commissioners to set the parameters for the budget. And again, there's other things that the county can do to provide the resources. For example, when I was a county commissioner back in 2011, 2012, we were talking about what could we do with the old correctional facility. And 4/5 of that old correctional facility was built in 1984 and 1985. And yet, when the new facility was built, after I left office, the commissioners ripped down the existing structure. And that could have been used for homeless shelters. That could have been used for veterans to give them a place to stay. It could have been used for storage. We don't have enough storage up there in Grafton County. And yet, this beautiful building, yes, it was maybe not perfect for a correctional facility, but it was useful space that we are now needing. The Register of Deeds says she needs more space to store the records. And yet this building, which was available, is now gone. That's wrong. That's a waste of the taxpayers' dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Morris?
What I would change about the budget. Well, on the revenue side, we currently have excess capacity at the correctional facility. So we have beds going that are vacant. And I know that the current superintendent has done a lot of work to try to see if there isn't some way that we can lease those beds out and bring in some income. And I think I would really like to continue to follow that line of inquiry, because it could possibly pay for some of the programs at the facility that we would like to have. Also, we're getting to the end of the bond on the jail, believe it or not. It hardly seems possible. But that opens up the possibility that we could create a capital investment fund so that we can start looking at what is going to need to happen at the nursing home as we go forward, and plan for that in a very rational way so that the tax rate doesn't go up and down and up and down, it just is stable. So those two things are very important. The other thing that I just want to say is that it would be really wonderful if it would be possible for us to hire a full-time dedicated psychiatrist for the jail and the nursing home. I don't know if that's entirely possible, but boy, would that make our programs a lot more effective. And I think, I've talked to some of the folks up there about that, and they agree, the people on the front line, that that would just really be very helpful. So that's a thing I might want to add to the budget. Sorry.
Well, we're getting ready to interview a new alternative sentencing director, and I'll be involved in that interview process. But Marcia, we have been working to try to get other inmates to come in. And there are 2 other counties that have the federal contract to have the federal inmates. And we asked Superintendent Elliott to go to the state of Vermont and find out, because they had an inmate in Pennsylvania who died over there. And the state of Vermont was putting out a request for proposals for, and we, the commissioners asked the Department of Corrections to look into that. And it just wasn't something that was feasible. So we have definitely been looking at all of those options.
We'll keep doing it.
We have.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we
Yes,
are.
Yes.
Yes, we are. And it's a matter of the commissioners at some point saying, we will do this. And this is part of the job of the county commissioners, is to be effective managers. And that hasn't been happening. And when you're on the short end of all the 2-to-1 votes, it makes it tough. And I'm on the short end of all the 2-to-1 votes.
Thank you both. That's great dialogue. We're at the end of our time here, so I'd like to start with you, Candidate Morris, and if you would offer up some closing statements.
One of the things that I want to remind folks out there is that I think it's true that when you get your ballot, our position is going to be the very last thing that you vote for. And it's not because it's not the, that it's the least important. It's very important. And so I just want to remind people that we're there and remember that it's very important. Your county government really is very important. And also, I think that I would hope that if I were to be so honored and fortunate as to be elected, that I would really like to keep line of communications open so that people feel like they really know what's happening on the county level, more than I think they do now. The question I keep getting on the campaign trail when I'm knocking on doors and somebody answers and I say, "Hi, I'm Marcia, I'm running for county commissioner," they say, "What?" Almost always, "What's a county commissioner?" So that's an issue I'd like to address.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Ahern.
Well, that's an issue that I did address. When I became a county commissioner January of 2017, I asked the board, we need to get our commissioner meetings on the technology here. We need to get our commissioner meetings on the public waves. And for whatever reason, the decision wasn't made. So I worked with PBTV, and what you folks need to do, you need to see Omer Ahern giving his report every 2 weeks through the good auspices of the PBTV, and you need to go to Just, J-U-S-T, Omer, O-M-E-R. And if you go to YouTube and you type in Just Omer, you're going to see me making these every 2-week reports on what's going on in the Grafton County government. So I recognize that as an issue right off. And unfortunately, the other 2 commissioners didn't feel it was as important to make sure that we had this information getting out to the people. And so, so I bring my vast experience in county government, and I want to continue to serve the people of Grafton County, to try to save them money, and I need your vote. I like Marcia. Marcia and I are good friends, and she's a very nice lady, but I'm the one with the experience and I know what the questions are that need to be asked. I'm not going to vote on anything if I haven't seen a report, something in writing. I'm not going to vote on something that's handed to me on a Tuesday morning and say, here, you need to approve this. If I haven't read it, I'm not going to approve it, because that's not the way to do things. Thank you very much. Vote for Omer. Hit a homer. Vote for Omer.
Oh, I can't beat the slogan. It's just not.
It's pretty good. Okay.
What can I do?
Thank you.
Thank you to Commissioner Ahern and candidate Morris for being with us tonight and sharing their passion for serving the communities of New Hampshire. And if you'd like to view this segment afterwards, go to YouTube, Pemmy Baker Television. You'll be able to see it there, as well as on Pemmy Baker Television. They'll be replaying it up until the time of the election, which is Tuesday, November 6th, only 12 days away. So stay tuned. We have New Hampshire representatives from District 8 coming up shortly. Thank you. Thank you both.
Good job.
I am the Plymouth, New Hampshire Rotary President, and I am tonight's moderator for this Meet the Candidate event. We also have Valerie Scarborough, who is here, and she's going to be our timekeeper. She has her little timing wand, so when she puts up her wrap it up, it is you have 30 seconds left, and then she'll beat you over the head with the red one. So, all right, the hook. Okay, so this is the third segment this evening, and this is New Hampshire House of Representatives District 8 candidates. Candidates this evening are, in no particular order, candidate Lynn Durham, candidate Sallie Fellows, Representative Suzanne Smith, candidate David Nash, and candidate Joyce Weston. Thank you all for coming. All right, so we're going to do a round robin for opening remarks. You'll have a minute and a half, and we are going to start with Lynn.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me. I am a resident of Holderness, New Hampshire, and I have a number of, since I'm old, I've done a lot of things in my, my lifetime. I'm a nurse, and so one of the things that I help to bring is information about medical things to the decisions on healthcare. I am an author, and I have written and I've studied at the Harvard Deaconess Mind Body Medical Institute, and I think that there's a lot of things that we need to do that are more creative and going to root cause of why somebody might seek opioids. I know some people do it as a prescription, but some people do it to relieve pain. I've taught in nursing school and colleges, and I'm a mother. I've started to get involved in politics because I see people calling us, our form of government, as a democracy, and it's not a democracy. And you know, people think that they've got the socialism and communism on the left, and the Nazism and the fascism on the right, and it's all on the left. Over here is anarchy, and I want to really reinstitute the constitutional form of government in our republic with the rule of law. And it's really important because I'm a family member, and I'm worried about what's going to be left to my granddaughter.
Excellent, thank you very much. All right, candidate Fellows.
I'm Sallie Fellows. I moved to Plymouth when I was 12 years old. 30 years ago, I moved to Holderness. I have a master's degree in educational administration and a graduate level certificate in school finance. Last year, I retired after 30 years at the State Department of Education. I was the department's school funding expert. I've worked on just about every state and federal funding program. Part of my job was helping legislators when they wanted to make changes to the school adequacy aid. So I know how state government works, and I know how to get things done in the state legislature. The state court has said that it's the constitutional responsibility of the state, not the towns, to pay for an adequate education. But the state is only funding 21% of what school districts spend to educate our students. I don't know exactly what adequacy aid costs, but I know it costs more than 21%. 7% is paid for by federal grants, and the balance, which is 72%, is being paid for by taxpayers. Of all the states, taxpayers in New Hampshire pay the highest percentage of the cost of educating our students. If elected, my primary focus is going to be on lowering property taxes for towns like Plymouth and other towns with high property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Suzanne Smith.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me. I'm Suzanne Smith, and I have served the people of Plymouth, Hebron, and Holderness for 10 years, 5 terms in the legislature in the New Hampshire House, and I'm running for re-election, obviously. I'm a ranking member on the Resources, Recreation, Development Committee in the House, and one of our prime things that we do on that committee is we work towards clean water, whether it's our lakes, rivers, and ponds, or whether it is drinking water. And we also deal with any issues related to the forestry industry, conservation lands, trails, whether it's hiking, biking, or ATVs, and anything related to New Hampshire state parks. I support energy efficiency because the least expensive energy that is the energy that we do not use. And if we expand energy efficiency projects and combine that with modern solar technology, small hydro, and locally produced biomass, we are well on our way to local energy solutions for our high electric bills. I ask for your vote on November 8th, 6th, and I look forward to continuing to serve the people of New Hampshire to keep New Hampshire the best place to live, to work, and to raise a family. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Nash?
Hi there. My name is David Nash. My wife and I live in Plymouth. My wife Phyllis and I own a small business called Trust Building and General Contracting. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I'm interested in limiting the amount of expenses that our state government takes out of our wallets. So one of my main reasons for running is because of just getting tired of having our taxes going up and up and up.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Weston.
Thank you. My name is Joyce Weston, and I was born and raised in New Hampshire. My father was a Republican and my mother was a Democrat. And I think from that dichotomy, I've learned that it's possible to communicate with people in a civil manner and come to resolutions. As soon as I got out of high school, I was off to the big city and got a degree in art, which fortunately I was able to turn that into a decent career in book design, which I did for 46 years. And 34 years of that was as an independent contractor, so I know something about running a business. In addition, I've always felt that it's very important to be involved in the community and to give back to the community. During my 20 years in Boston, I was co-founder of the largest urban land trust there, which was focused on community gardening. And now up in Plymouth, I've been chair of the auction committee for a fundraiser for Community Closet for the last 10 years. And I do quite a lot locally as well. But I do believe in giving back to the community, and that's why I want to continue to go to the House. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. So we're going to start off with an icebreaker question. And this is going to go to Candidate Fellows first. I'm sure you don't spend much time in front of the television, but if you were to find the time, what movie could you not pass up watching as you're flipping through the channels?
That would have to be Ocean's 11. I don't exactly know why, but since I've watched it more than any other movie, it must be my favorite.
Great answer. Representative Smith.
Oh, this is a tough one. I love movies. I would say any of the Harry Potter movies would be good because they're just so escapist.
Excellent, excellent. Candidate Nash.
Field of Dreams.
Ooh, that's a
good one. Candidate Weston.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Can't
See,
pass
they're
it
all
up.
good choices.
Yeah, these
night
are
after
great.
this.
All right, and Candidate Durham.
I thought of the movie about Vivian Thomas, who's the first heart surgeon who never was a doctor. But the first one I thought of was The Sound of Music, and part of it was, well, it's so long that I had taped it for my son, and the VHS ran out, and he came home from a friend's house, and he said, Mom, did you know there's something past the wedding?
Oh, fantastic. All right, so we're going to jump right into our questions, and this is going to go to Representative Suzanne Smith first. Why are you running, and how would you do things differently than your opponents?
I'm running, I've been in the House for 10 years. I really like my work there. It's been a college education, I think, and all the people I have met and the work that we've accomplished working together on a bipartisan basis in much of the, when you're in a committee, the work is pretty bipartisan because you're working with people who care about the issues. And so I really would like to continue that. There's a lot more for me to learn. How do I differ from my opponent? I haven't worked with either Lynn or David, so I can't really say specifically, but I do believe that we need to do more for public schools. I oppose the voucher programs, which will take money from public schools and give that to private and religious schools. I support Medicaid expansion. Now that did pass almost unanimously this year, but it was a struggle to get to that point. And I think it's really important that all of our citizens be allowed to vote without hindrances. And that's a very important thing to me, and I know there has been a huge push to restrict voting rights, and I do not agree with that.
Thank you very much. Candidate Nash.
Why am I running? I'm asking to be elected by the citizens of our district because I do not like the moral and ethical decisions that are being made on my behalf and on behalf of the district in our state. I'm running because some of the decisions by our current representatives have been to vote for higher gas taxes, higher taxes on small businesses, and giving taxes to people for their own personal lifestyle decisions and for voting against gun rights. I know it is challenging to keep up with what is going on in Concord. But I am a man of faith and I am a man of conscience, and that faith causes me to make decisions that are in agreement with the moral laws of our existence. One does not have to follow God to follow moral laws of your own conscience. I'm asking for the people's vote if they want someone to spend their money honestly and with restraint. And they want someone to make decisions on laws of our state with a conscience.
Thank you. Candidate Weston.
Oh, I am running because I'm really interested in encouraging job growth and opportunities up here in Grafton County. We're losing our graduates are our greatest export. The kids are disappearing. And I also feel that women in New Hampshire are not really getting a fair shake. We're number 48th in the country in terms of wage disparity between men and women. And that's partially because of the minimum wage. We have a disproportionate percentage of minimum wage earners that are women. I think it's Alabama and Mississippi and Missouri that beat us on that. So I think raising the minimum wage would be a great idea, and also encouraging more science and math for girls in schools to encourage them to go out and do more for themselves. In terms of job opportunity here in Plymouth, there are other towns that are doing a great job through economic gardening to support entrepreneurs and to help them take a small or mid-sized business and grow it so that jobs are created. So that's my primary focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Durham. Or, sorry.
Right.
Candidate Durham.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I know Sarah from, I do real estate, and I really appreciate that. I'm running, as I mentioned it before, I really believe in the U.S. and the New Hampshire Constitution. I believe in our founding documents. I have a little paper, and I said, read the founding documents, and somebody asked me what they were. So I think it's really important that we reflect on them, and we really, it was inspired, and I think that we need to stay with them. I am, as I mentioned, a real estate agent. I believe in private property rights, and check out granitestatefutures.org with an S. I don't think somebody from outside of our country should be telling us what we need to do here in New Hampshire and with our private property. Is that, oh, okay. I thought it was done. And so there was two parts to that question, and I'm sorry if I...
Yep. So why are you running, and how would you do things differently than your opponent?
Well, as you said, I'm not positive, but one of the things is, legalizing marijuana, I would not be voting for. I find that there would be another whole arm of government that we will be paying people to regulate it, and we'll have new people and healthcare and pensions, and it hasn't been that successful in Colorado. I've heard that they're making money on it, but what they have for cost is wiping it all out. So we can let Massachusetts and Vermont and Massachusetts check it out before we enter it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Candidate Fellows.
I'm running because I have a plan to reduce property taxes. In New Hampshire, we have charter schools. Charter schools are schools that are tuition-free, they're state-funded, and they're private schools that are exempt from almost all state regulations. Unlike districts, they're not required to hire certified teachers, guidance counselors, nurses. They're not required to provide special ed services, sports, or transportation. So why is the state funding charter schools at $7,000 per student? And adequacy aid to school districts is only $3,600 per student. I will introduce a bill to use $7,000 for both of them. This will help area towns with high property taxes. It'll send an additional $500,000 more each year to Plymouth and to Ashland. When the state pays more in aid, the property taxpayers pay less. You may be wondering where the money would come to fund this increased aid. I bet you were wondering that. So, in the fiscal year just ended, revenues from business taxes and from the room and meals taxes came in $160 million higher than the year before. With our strong economy, these revenues will continue to go. So now is the time for some property taxpayers to get a tax cut.
Thank you very much. And would any of the candidates like a chance for a rebuttal before we move on? No?
No,
Okay,
it's okay.
Great.
We're easy.
And this is going to be a longer segment than the others just because we do have 5 candidates here. So I want to remind the folks who are watching us right now that we are with the New Hampshire House of Representatives candidates for District 8, which is Hebron, Holderness, and Plymouth. So we're going to move on now to question 3. On the ballot, there are 2 questions pertaining to amendments to the New Hampshire State Constitution. Question 1, if passed, this amendment would allow taxpayers to have legal standing to challenge.
Are you sure that that's the next question?
Oh, nope. I jumped ahead. So we're going to do question 2. Okay, so we're going to back up and we'll give you guys a chance to think about question 3 a little longer. So question 2, what political issues have you been working on in the last 2 years? We're going to start with Representative Suzanne Smith.
Good question. Northern Pass has occupied a lot of my time for about 8 years, and it finally was shot down by the Site Evaluation Committee last February by unanimous vote, and it is now going to the Supreme Court, so the battle is not over yet. But I was the prime sponsor of Energy Corridor, designated energy infrastructure corridor legislation a couple of years ago, and that has been used as a alternative that any company could use to get their project through. But fighting Northern Pass has been huge on my to-do list. Another thing that I'm really proud of is that I serve on the Drinking and Groundwater Trust Fund Advisory Commission, and we get to study applications for people who are trying to decontaminate their drinking water. And this, like 2 months ago, working with Plymouth Water and Sewer, I was able to convince the Commission that Plymouth should get a $1.65 million grant to help build Plymouth a new well to replace the one that is right next to the interstate and is contaminated with salt. So that's been a huge issue, and I've been really pleased that I was able to help do that. Forgot biomass, but I'll do that later.
Candidate Nash?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, honestly, I've not been working on any specific issues, but I have been active politically in supporting candidates, current candidates or candidates who are seeking office who are led by the heart and not the masses. I was watching a movie recently and it depicted the Nazis. Oh, sorry, we're not getting.
Yes.
We're not getting. Yeah. Okay. I was watching a movie recently, and it was depicting the Nazis invading Greece, and they were rounding up the citizens there and forcing them to acknowledge, Hitler as their new leader. And one woman turns around in the movie, in the crowd, in the square, and marches off, refuses to do that, and she's shot in the back and killed. But the question is, who was the most free in that situation? And my contention there is that is the person that is not following the masses and is not just doing what general society thinks or is asking them to do, but one that is following their conscience and their heart.
Excellent, thank you. Candidate Weston?
I too haven't been working on anything in particular, but I just finished a term as chair of Plymouth Area Democrats, where we were bringing in speakers to educate our membership. So I was very involved in looking at the issues that would be of interest to them, and I think I brought in a fairly broad view of on different subjects. I also did what I could about Northern Pass, and I've been studying up on different issues now with particular interest, specifically in what to do about job growth and helping students to get out of the burden of student debt. And so I have a broad range of interests, and I think I understand the towns pretty well, having worked with the Democrats for the last decade or so. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Durham?
Thank you, Sarah. I've been demoted. I have been apolitical most of my life, but recently I have been a little bit more involved. I've been mostly doing community things, been working with my church, been working with the Historical Society. My past, I've been in prisons. I have one of the stories in Serving Productive Time is from some of my time that I've gone into prisons, in the women's prisons and in jails, and so there's a number of things that interest me. One of them is election integrity, and I don't feel that asking people to prove that they are a resident of New Hampshire is asking too much. They will show ID to get cigarettes or alcohol or get on an airplane, and it's taking my vote away if somebody's not supposed to be voting. It's one thing that I've gathered a lot of research on it, and I have mailed it off to a number of senators and representatives at the federal level, the White House, some of the TV stations, to see if we can do something where we actually check the source code on any machine voting, and that there's a paper trail, and that the paper trail is checked. Areas chosen after the election in a city ward or a couple small towns. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Candidate Fellows?
I've been doing a lot of research related to education and to property taxes. And there are three things that I would like to do if elected. I will introduce a bill to update the low-income homeowner property tax relief program. This is a program that provides rebates of the state portion of your property tax bill to people who are low income. The formula is based on income and home values it was set in 2002. So the maximum rebate anybody can get is $220. I want to just update that formula to provide new income and home value guidelines that are current with today's rate. I also plan to work on a gun-free school zone law. I did a lot of research on this. New Hampshire is one of only 3 states without such a law. We have nothing that prohibits an adult who legally owns a firearm from bringing that weapon onto school grounds. Police need a law that they can enforce, and gun owners need to have clear guidelines for what is allowed and what's not allowed. The last thing I would like to address is funding for the university system. 10 years ago, the university system received $100 million a year from the state, and now they're only receiving $81 million a year. The lack of state funding is why New Hampshire has the highest in-state tuition rate of any state in the nation.
Thank you very much. All right. Now we're going to go on to question 3. And candidate fellows, I'm going to start off with you, since you were kind enough to keep me on task. On the ballot, there are 2 questions pertaining to the amendment to the New Hampshire State Constitution. Question 1, if passed, this amendment would allow taxpayers to have legal standing to challenge a governmental action in court without having to prove they were personally affected. Question 2 was approved 235 to 96 in the House and 15 to 9 in the Senate, just qualifying for the supermajority needed to be placed on the ballot. If passed, this amendment would change the way courts balance governmental interests in gaining access to personal information versus the nature and degree of intrusion on an individual's privacy rights. How would you vote on these 2 amendments and why?
I'm going to tell you, but if you want a longer explanation, you can just read the Plymouth Record Enterprise that came out today, because I have a letter to editor about this. I support this amendment. It will restore taxpayer rights to ask the courts for a ruling if government expenditures are legal. It's a critical element to our system of government's checks and balances because the court can't make a ruling unless somebody asks the court to do so. Also, it's important to understand that this is not for people who think the towns are spending too much money. This is about people challenging an expenditure that they think is illegal. An example would be for the state paying tuition to private religious schools. Another example would be a selectman who votes on a contract and he has a conflict of interest. For 150 years, the courts have allowed taxpayers to sue the government just on the basis of being a taxpayer, and things changed. In 2010, the court made an interpretation of state law saying it wasn't sufficient just to be a taxpayer. You had to show that you were personally injured by that expenditure. If this amendment passes, it's just going to restore things to the way they were 10 years ago. And the courts, it will give the courts an opportunity to identify illegal or unconstitutional expenditures. Some people are concerned that this well, I need to wrap it up. They're concerned that the lawsuits, it will fuel frivolous lawsuits, but the Chuck Douglas, former state Supreme Court justice, says that that won't happen. It didn't happen before. There's no reason to think it'll happen this time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Candidate Nash?
Thank you. I think the question 1 is fairly obvious that, and I'm in agreement with question 1. I'm not in agreement with question 2. And primarily because I am a person who feels that a question 2 could be used for matters of the abortion issue. So I'm in agreement that life begins at conception, and that the sanctity of human life and the sanctity of the child needs to be protected, and that question 2 may undermine the ability to protect those children.
Thank you very much. Candidate Weston.
Yeah, when I first read these 2 ballot questions, I thought this is a no-brainer. I mean, you know, it sounded wonderful. But I have since read quite a few analysis of the two questions, and I have talked to a number of people who are involved in town government and people who have a law degree, which I don't. And what I've gleaned from that is that neither one of these ballot questions is ready. They need to be reworked with additional thought put into them, because we have to be careful what we do to our Constitution. I think particularly on number 2, it could create problems for means-based things where people apply for means-based, what am I trying to say? You know what I mean. Assistance, support. And on the first one, I am concerned about frivolous litigation. We've had it in our own town. I know Hebron's had it as well. It costs a great deal when someone brings an issue, still has to be litigated even if it's eventually thrown out of the court. So I would not support either one of these.
Excellent, thank you. Candidate Durham?
On question number 1, I believe in the Constitution, and it was originally in the Constitution and taken out. So I lean towards saying yes for question number 1. On question number 2, I need to study it a little further. I've understood too that, I mean, at first blush it looks like yes, definitely. But I want to study it a little bit further, because I think that it needs to be corrected, because it's going to be used in other ways. So I'm withholding my answer for that.
Excellent, thank you. Representative Smith?
I served on the Judiciary Committee this year, and both of those CACRs came before us. And as you've heard, question 1 passed almost unanimously in the House, and in the committee, no one testified against it. So for me, it was like, this is a no-brainer, as candidate Weston said. However, since I've been doing all my studying in preparation for the actual vote in a week and a half, I have started second-guessing myself, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do. And in Hebron, we're having an issue right now where there has been a suit against the town for spending money, you know, and it's just the kind of thing that makes you go, So I'm actually still working on that one. Number 2, I have written in my notes from committee, good idea needs work, not clear. So that was my analysis when we first heard the bill. And, you know, we do need to protect privacy with DNA and, you know, people going through other people's garbage to find out whose DNA is on the coffee cup, and all our electronic moving around of information. We do need to address a privacy issue, but I don't think this is the right constitutional amendment to do that. And it's going to take 2/3 to take back what we vote on if it passes. And so it's really important to get this right.
Excellent. Thank you all. Okay, so we're at the end of our time, and we're going to have summary statements from each of you. They're going to be 1 minute in length, so please be brief. And we are going to start with candidate Nash.
I knew you were going to do that.
She loves it.
And that's fine. I just want the citizens of District 8 to know that you don't solve our problems by throwing more money at them. No business solves problems by throwing money at it that they don't have. The small businesses that were started in garages and in basements do not go out and spend large amounts of money in order to become successful. And our government should be run the same way. So taxing does not solve the problem. Throwing more money at schools does not solve the education problem. And quite frankly, I don't believe the opioid crisis is a money issue. It's it's for some ways it's a spiritual issue. It's an issue where people don't have a sense of worth and are looking for an escape. So I thank you for your time and thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you very much. Candidate Weston.
Well, I think we have a wonderful team here. I'm excited to work with Suzanne and with Sallie, and Lynn as well. But we only had 3 slots. But my focus is really to get Concord to pay attention to us up here, because I think we're ignored. I think we need more investment in Grafton County and Coos County, and attention to the fact that we are losing our young people. We're losing our population in general. Grafton County is going down, and Plymouth is losing people at an alarming rate. So we need to do something to stop that spiral, because without young families up here, it's just going to get worse and worse. So I want to really focus on the North Country and do what I can for this particular area. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Candidate Durham.
Yes, I was going as my nursing background for the health of New Hampshire. I've been a wellness coach and looking at things that lift us. I'm interested in civility and creativity and not being against anybody here, but being beside them, putting our problem out in front of us. Because, as I mentioned, I was apolitical. We have to be New Hampshire residents and U.S. citizens, and hopefully we all want what's best, and we're going at it from different angles. And I talk about going beyond Z, where you have to come up with at least 27 different ideas, and then we say, well, how does this work best with what we feel and how we look at things, and see if we can come and add some civility to this country and this state.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Candidate Fellows.
I'm running to help the property taxpayers in towns like Plymouth, where the tax rates are very high. There are towns where their rates are so high they've been cutting programs. And I want to improve education in New Hampshire. I'm concerned about the quality of schools and the quality of higher education. So I want to protect those two institutions that are so important to the producing good citizens, and they're important to attracting young people to this state.
Thank you very much. Representative Smith.
Thank you. Although I work largely in the environmental and energy committees in the House and am very engaged in supporting biomass and fighting Northern Pass and those kind of things, I also try to pay good attention and attend hearings and pay attention to how I'm voting when it comes to health care issues, when it comes to labor issues, when it comes to health and human services, and how we are supporting our young people and our old people in the state. When I go door to door, I give people my card with my phone number. I email, I say contact me. I think I have been doing a decent job, and a few people call me, and I hopefully can help them when I can. And so I would like to continue serving as state rep for the area and work with my colleagues who are elected alongside me.
Excellent. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. We thank you for your time and for your service to the community. And again, I'd like to remind everybody that voting is on Tuesday, November 6th, and you get to vote for more than one of these fine candidates here. So if you need a replay on tonight's discussion, you can find that on YouTube on the Pemmy Baker TV channel, and then it will also be playing on Pemmy Baker Television from now until the election. So stay tuned. We have one more round of representatives coming up. Thank you all.
Thank you.
say thank you to everybody for showing up. And this is our third candidates night. Say a big thank you to Sarah Holland, our moderator.
Oh, thank you.
Val Scarborough, who's also our timekeeper, as well as sort of representing us from the town of Plymouth, the select board member. And just say thanks to the town of Plymouth for being such a great steward of this channel and allowing this sort of nonpartisan candidates night. It's kind of unusual. Not too many other stations do it, actually. So, and just thanks to everybody for being here and making it a big success. Zach Cottrell is our intern from PSU as well. First year. He does help a lot on the sports. And in the back there we have Allie Butterfield hiding. It's our third semester with us. She's been a great help at the station. And we have Andrew Fenn, who is our assistant manager, and you know him from the sports, all the sports he does. So thanks very much. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you.
Well, hi again. I'm Sarah Holland. I am the moderator for this evening, and this is our fourth and final segment. And this is New Hampshire House of Representatives, District 9 and 17. Thank you. I was nervous earlier that I got that one wrong too. But District 9 is 5 towns. That's Alexandria, Ashland, Bristol, Bridgewater, and Grafton. And then District 17 is 6 towns, and that's Alexandria, Ashland, Bridgewater, Bristol, Enfield, and Grafton. Our candidates this evening, we have candidate Ned Gordan. We have candidate Tejasinha. Can you say that again for me? Tejasinha Sivalingam. Thank you. Representative Steve Darrow and candidate Josh Adjutant. Excellent. So we're going to start with opening remarks like we have with previous candidates. You'll have a minute and a half, and you will have the timekeeper will show you at the 30-second mark, and then you'll get the red wand if you go over time. All right, and we're going to start with candidate Gordan.
Thank you for inviting us tonight. Much appreciated. I'm Ned Gordan. I have a history of community service. I'm a local boy. I grew up in South Alexandria and migrated all the way to Bristol, and have lived in Bristol for the last 40 years, raised our family there. I have a long history of community service. I was a selectman, did all the things that you ordinarily do in the town, all the committees. And I've been the town moderator for 25 years. I've been the school district moderator for 25 years. I previously served in the House of Representatives for 1 term, and then served in the New Hampshire Senate for 4 terms. I wasn't defeated. I left voluntarily. Governor Lynch made me a judge. And so I became a judge, and for the last 13 years have sat as a judge. But in June, I turned 70. And in New Hampshire, under the New Hampshire Constitution, when you turn 70, your term as a judge is done. It's mandatory retirement. So what I want to do is I want to continue my community service. I want to be of value to my community. I want to represent the communities, the 5 communities in District 9, and represent them well.
Excellent, thank you very much. Candidate Sivalingam.
Thank you. I want to thank all the citizens and voters at home for tuning in and watching this, and thank you to PBTV for hosting this. And I'm humbled to run alongside such wonderful candidates that have such an exceptional history of service. In our great country, in our great state, really only here in this country, a country that has a government that's by the people and for the people, that ordinary people like us can run for these offices. And what makes that possible is patriotic citizens like yourselves that go out and say, I care about policy more than politics. I care about a commitment to service more than status. So I look forward to this discussion, and I thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Darrow.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us here tonight, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Stephen Darrow. My friends call me Steve, and I wish you would too. You know, I first came to New Hampshire to go to college many years ago, and I never left. I'm still here. After I received my degree in literature, I worked at United Parcel Service for 28 years, 27 of which were in management. There I learned the skills that I'm using today in the State House. Currently, I'm seeking my third term in Grafton District 17. I serve as the Vice Chair of the Environment and Agriculture Department. But my public service started much earlier. I first served as a commissioner to the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission. I got a taste of what politics was like there, and I ran for selectman, where I am currently serving in my 5th three-year term. I served a term in the Mascoma Valley Regional School District, and I look to continue that service, and I'm asking for your vote tonight, and thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Candidate Adjutant.
Thank you very much. Thank Pemmy Baker TV for having us here. Thank you, Mr. Darrow, for being here. In 2015, New Hampshire was the only state in the United States where wages fell on average. Most Bristol residents, when they go to Hannaford's, have to drive over at least one red-listed bridge in order to get there. Property taxes in New Hampshire continue to remain some of the highest in the country for very little social services in return. And in 2017, the New Hampshire House voted to give almost $250 million in tax breaks to out-of-state corporations in its budget. These are problems that New Hampshire faces every day. And unfortunately, my opponent, Mr. Darrow, in the House voted to continue to allow doctors to bully trans kids as part of not pushing the ban on transgender conversion therapy. Voted for the budget that gave $250 million in tax breaks to out-of-state corporations, like I said, and voted to shoot down a voluntary paid family leave program. And I mention these 3 issues specifically because they are 3 instances where more than 10 Republicans crossed party lines in order to vote on the right side of that. So I look forward to having a discussion tonight about the issues that affect Granite Staters in Bristol, Ashland, Alexandria, Grafton, and Enfield and Bridgewater.
Excellent, thank you all. So this evening I gave our prior candidates their icebreaker question early. I did not do that with you folks because I wanted to see how this went. So here's your icebreaker question, and we are going to start with candidate Sivalingam. First, if you woke up tomorrow as a superhero, who would it be?
Oh, Superman.
There we go. All right, Representative Darrow.
I would wake up as Spider-Man.
Ooh, okay, all right. And Candidate Gordan.
I'm in the Superman category.
Excellent. And Candidate Adjutant.
We gotta say Batman.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you guys very much. We're going to jump right into question number 1, and that is going to go to Representative Darrow first. And that question is, why are you running, and how would you do things differently than your opponents?
Well, thank you for the question. The reason I'm running, after serving 4 terms as a select board member, most of which I served as chairman in Grafton, I thought that I could take what talents I had learned in local government to Concord. And there was a burning issue at the time in Grafton, and that is there was an industrial wind farm that was about to come into town and basically bully the town into accepting their terms and to build and basically rip up our ridgetops in order to put up windmills, which I don't believe were very efficient. The people in my town, the voters, were very frustrated. And we did adopt the rights-based ordinance, which as a select board member I signed on to, and I went to Concord. And unfortunately, I was able to win. I prevailed in my first election, and I went there, became a member of the Environment and Agriculture Committee. And the thing about that committee that kind of is the hallmark of my time in Concord and my hallmark of being a selectman is you hang your party at the door. It's a nonpartisan committee, and I am known as a consensus builder. I work with both sides, and people on either side will tell you that is the case. I get along well with people, and I want to bring back the best for my local community. And in order to do that, once again, I'm asking for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Candidate Adjutant.
So I'm running in large part because I was very fortunate growing up to have a grandfather who force-fed us the Andy Griffith Show. And it sort of set the stage for my beliefs in political philosophy. And, one thing I've noticed is, looking back on the show now, while Sheriff Taylor was busy trying to keep Barney out of trouble, you never really heard him talk about how much harder it was getting to afford to live in Mayberry. Yet when I'm knocking on doors in Enfield, Grafton, Alexandria, the whole district, that's half the conversations we're having. Folks are finding it hard to afford to live in the community. I know in my opening statement I mentioned a bunch of problems, so now I want to offer some solutions. I think in regards to getting property taxes down, we need to reinstate the business profits taxes, which gave $250 million in revenue to the Walmarts and Amazons of the world. If we can dedicate that $250 million to state aid to education, not only can we get everybody's property tax rates down, but we can make sure the kids at school aren't reading by candlelight. I think in regards to health insurance costs, I want to introduce what I call the Medicaid Expansion Supplementation Program. That would allow folks to buy into the Medicaid expansion benefits for the operating costs of the program only. So we can do it without a broad-based tax, but we can make sure all those people get coverage for about $20 a week, which would be dramatically cheaper than private insurance. I'm running because I want New Hampshire to be a place where the kids that I mentored at the Tapley Thompson Community Center can afford to live when our time is up.
Thank you very much. Candidate Gordan.
Well, despite all the problems that we've heard, we have a very high quality of life here in New Hampshire. And I think the reason that I'm running is because I'd like to preserve that high quality of life here in New Hampshire. I think I don't have a broad agenda like other people, but I think the primary thing that I would focus on is constituent services. And that's what I did as a senator, that's what I do here, to make sure that people are treated fairly by the state, that they have an equal break. And that's the primary. The two other issues which are very important to me, one is making sure that our children are safe here in the state. And I've worked extensively with the state DCYF as a judge, and before that as a senator, to try to improve the quality of services that we provide. And I think much has to be done in order to hold the state accountable and DCYF more accountable than it's been held in the past, to provide a safe environment for our children to live. And the other area is the area of substance abuse. I was the sponsor of the alcohol fund. And when I was in the Senate, it was passed. It's fully funded. It's going to be fully funded now, and it's the basis for Medicaid in the state, our Medicaid expansion in the state. But I'm concerned right now with the money that we're getting from the federal government, that money we're getting a ton of money, but I'm not sure how effective it is. And I'd like to see more money put towards prevention, because I believe that prevention dollars will be much more effective than just spending money on treatment. You can't treat your way out of the problem.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Candidate Sivalingam.
Thank you. I'm running for office because I care. I'm married. I have 2 children. We own a couple pieces of property. I care about my family. I care about your family. I care about my community. I care about your community. I care about our health, our safety, our welfare, our prosperity, and our education. I'm going to bring civility to the House of Representatives. I'm going to bring critical thinking. And I'm going to bring a commitment to our foundational principles. I'm not your typical Democrat in some ways. You can go and check me out on my website, servepeoplenotpower.org. I want to preserve and protect your Second Amendment rights. At the same time, I also believe that health care is a human right. I am not interested in instituting new taxes, but I want to protect the environment and move forward with a constitutional amendment that would allow communities to make decisions to stop projects such as Northern Pass for their health, safety, and welfare. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to question number 2. And this is going to go to candidate Gordan first. What political issues have you been working on in the last 2 years?
Well, that's a great question for me because I've been a judge up until June, and of course I can't be involved in political matters, but I have indirectly, and I've sat on the Governor's Commission for with regard to alcohol and other drugs, and I've sat on that for many years. I was the sponsor of the bill to create that, and I sponsored the bill to create the alcohol fund, taking 5% of the Liquor Commission profits to deal with substance abuse issues. And so I work continuously. And the issue is, we did that almost 20 years ago. We created that fund. We created that fund, and the state didn't recognize that we have a problem. And we do have a substance abuse problem. And it's not just an opioid problem in the state. It's a across-the-board substance abuse problem, including alcohol, which was the major concern that I had when I started out. And I understand the governor's just put in place this new plan with 9 sites, and it's going to satellite sites and spread out to provide services. But my biggest concern is how much of that money is going to go into administration and programs, and how much money is actually going to be providing direct services. So that's one of the things I'm working on. And the other one is the DCYF issue. Frankly, just throwing, and then I heard the governor talk today on the radio, and he's saying, well, we gave all this money to DCYF this year. Well, money isn't the solution, to that problem. It's changing the mindset and how we deal with those kids, and because we need to make those kids safe.
Excellent, thank you. Candidate Adjutant.
For the last 2 years, I've been very involved in the fight against Northern Pass. Like a majority of us, it was a garbage project. It still is a garbage project. It would have done irreversible damage to Ashland, Bridgewater, and Bristol, the community that I grew up in. In late 2016, I was very proud to travel to North Dakota to stand with the Lakota Nation in their fight against the oil pipeline, which has now unfortunately poisoned their water irreversibly. I was very proud in May to stand with the IBEW local in their fight for the rights that they bargained for initially with the New Hampshire Electric Co-op. I've never been so impressed with the strike. They handled themselves very well, and I was glad to see that they won that fight. I have been a proud supporter of the Meals on Wheels program. I think they do phenomenal work, especially in a district that is as rural as ours. A lot of seniors, especially in some of the corners where it's harder for them to come out and get access to company or a meal. I think it's very important that we do that. Ultimately, though obviously now we're in a campaign season, I've spent a good majority of the time knocking on doors and talking to folks, not just Democrats but Republicans as well. And I think that if we're successful in 12 days, I hope that makes me a better legislator.
Excellent, thank you very much. Representative Darrow.
Thank you once again. Well, first thing I'd like to say before I start is the business tax breaks. They not only benefit large corporations, and when they benefit large corporations, they bring more employees to the table. But they also, more importantly, benefit small businesses. And the small business is the backbone of our community. And if we want to retain the New Hampshire advantage, we have to have a business-friendly environment, and we must make it so these small businesses can survive. For the last couple of years, I've been working on a number of issues, primarily in my Environment and Agriculture Committee. And I guess the most prominent one that we've had lately is the animal cruelty bill, which was brought about by the 84 Great Danes that were seized in Wolfboro. And that generated a bill that caused much debate in Concord. It had lengthy hearings in the Senate, and when it made it to my committee, we also had lengthy hearings on it too. And it had a couple of problems in it. Unfortunately, the bill did not pass, but we have another bill that we held for further consideration in my committee, and we've been meeting in the past couple of weeks, and we're basically going to divide that bill in two so we could define what is exactly animal cruelty, and we have another bill that's going to define on what the cost of care will be. So if a town is in a situation like Wolfboro, they will be able to pay for what's happened to the poor animals that have been abused. I know in my small town of Grafton, we've had that before, and $25,000 is a big chunk for a small town like Grafton, but a bill that's in excess of $2 million is too much for anybody to bear. Thank you.
Can I get a rebuttal on that?
Yes, please.
I know that Mr. Darrow and I are going to be very busy for the next 12 days, but I would encourage him to come to the Tilton Walmart with me at some point, because like I mentioned in my opening remarks, Walmart was one of the beneficiaries of the corporate tax cuts. Walmart heavily invested their tax cut money into stock buybacks and inflated their own stock and spent a lot of money internally. The other thing that they did, specifically in the Tilton location, was they put in more self-checkouts. So we have this conversation about adding jobs and all this, but when these companies are investing in themselves in a way that they're cutting jobs, I don't think that's productive. And if we just have hundreds of millions of dollars to throw around, I don't think assisting Walmart's the way to do that. I think that we help small businesses by relieving the burden of them of providing health insurance, and we do that with the Medicaid expansion supplementation program.
May I rebut? Thank you. Well, I would have to say that Walmart is not the only large corporate customer that's an employee in the state. So if we want to say that because of Walmart's practices that we should eliminate these tax cuts that are providing a robust economy in New Hampshire, we're making a big mistake. And I would say that we need to, once again, encourage strong economic growth, and that's what's making New Hampshire a better place, and I think we need to continue doing it.
Thank you. Candidate Sivalingam.
So I would like the people of Ashland, Alexandria, Bristol, Bridgewater, and Grafton to take an opportunity and look back at previous Board of Selectmen videos for Ashland. I'm a former selectman. I've been working hard to stop Northern Pass. I work to support the proposed rights-based ordinance in Ashland. I support conceptually, ideologically, the rights-based ordinances that have been adopted in Grafton and Alexandria. And I have worked also to support, as a citizen, encourage my representatives to support the constitutional amendment for local self-governance so that communities would be supported and have teeth in their RBOs, their rights-based ordinances. I've also worked hard to reduce municipal taxes, probably harder than any selectman on the Board of Selectmen in Ashland in the last 2 years, I would argue. But I'll leave that to you to go investigate the minutes and watch the videos. I've also worked hard to ensure that principles of our democratic republic have been present at the municipal level, such as checks and balances and separations of power. For example, I've supported the Municipal Budget Committee in continuing to be a statutory committee. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to move on to question number 3, which is a little lengthy. So on the ballot, there are 2 questions pertaining to amendments to the New Hampshire State Constitution. Question 1, if passed, this amendment would allow taxpayers to have legal standing to challenge a governmental action in court without having to prove that they were personally affected. Question 2, which was approved 235 to 96 in the House and 15 to 9 in the Senate, just qualifying for the supermajority that needed to be placed on the ballot. If passed, the amendment would change the way courts balance government interest in gaining access to personal information versus the nature and degree of intrusion on an individual's privacy rights. How would you vote on these 2 amendments and why? And we're going to start with Candidate Adjutant.
Here's my problem with question 1. Williams Hill Road in Grafton is currently unpaved. Riddle Hill Road is paved and Prescott Hill is paved. If question 1 were to go into effect, I know our viewers in Grafton and Enfield right now are going to know the term Free State Project. Question 1, being a constitutional amendment, would be a field day to the Free State Project, who would throw lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to stop even the most basic things moving forward in the Grafton and Mascoma area. Anybody that's been to a Grafton town meeting knows that. My concern with, the road, for example, if the town of Grafton were to move forward on hypothetically paving Williams Hill Road and they get partially through the project, and then the Free State Project does what the Free State Project is going to do and sue, number 1, is there an automatic stay on the project? Number 2, is there an automatic stay on the budget? Number 3, can the town operate on a budget? And number 4, is the item in the budget being sued, or is the budget being sued if it's passed as in single item? I think there are too many unanswered questions. I have been a frustrated taxpayer, annoyed with how my government has spent my money in the past, but I think this really needs to go back to the House. I think there are a lot of unanswered questions here. On question 2, I was a critic of the Patriot Act's overreaches under the Bush administration, continuing under the Obama administration, and now under the Trump administration. So I understand the need for privacy. My issue with number 2 is that I don't know if it passing on a consent vote or on the consent calendar is the legal grounds in order to push a constitutional amendment forward if it was passed on a single vote with multiple other pieces of legislation. So I think that if that were to be challenged in court, that could provide some problems. That's another one that I hope to work on the legislature or work on in the House if we're successful in a couple weeks. But as of right now, I'm no on both.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Darrow.
Thank you. Well, first of all, very quickly, I live in Grafton, and I go to the town meetings. I go to deliberative sessions. Typically, I'm not the moderator, but I'm a selectman, and I'm sitting up there watching the ongoings, and some of the things that my opponent's saying just doesn't happen. We've had a couple of long meetings, but lately it's been pretty quiet. So I would say that both of these amendments, they're both bipartisan amendments, and I'm going to say that I'm going to support both. The constitutional amendment restores to the taxpayers of our state the legal ability to bring certain lawsuits relating to the spending of public funds by the state or the political subdivisions in which the taxpayer resides. In doing so, our taxpayers will have broader access to our courts and greater ability to ensure government accountability. As the New Hampshire Supreme Court noted several decades ago, every taxpayer has a vital interest in proper government, regardless of whether his or her purse is specifically affected. Until relatively recently, the New Hampshire Supreme Court recognized taxpayer standing. This amendment will assure that this important taxpayer right will continue to be recognized and enforced. The second question, this constitutional amendment formally recognizes our right to privacy and our personal information. We've long protected our privacy in our persons, in our houses, in our papers and effects. But this omits the modern ability to collect and analyze personal information, things like health data, information from our DNA, etc. Our personal information today is perhaps more important than those items already protected. And this resolution will provide the same protection to our personal data that we have for our physical things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Sivalingam.
So on question number 1, here's the concern that I have. It says taxpayer, not citizen. So really what I'm concerned about is that it's establishing a privilege for those who are taxpayers and recognize the problem that I have. It seems to say that you need citizenship plus taxpayer status to have a standing for a claim. To me, that's unconstitutional because in Article 10 it says government being instituted for the common benefit and not for the private interest of any one man or class of men. So I feel that inherently it's actually contrary to our Constitution. I'm very surprised that it even passed the House and the Senate. I'm very disappointed with it. I will not support question number 1. I do not support it, and I don't encourage you to vote for it. Now, question number 2, I do support. With some reservation, but I support it, and here's why. Privacy is exceptionally important. It doesn't have in question number 2 a mention of protection against private intrusion. That concerns me greatly. That needs to be added. But honestly, I don't want to miss this opportunity to get this little, our foot in the door here and have some protection for our privacy against government intrusion. So for that reason, I support it, but I support it with the idea that it's a first step, and we need to move on and later on put something in place also for private intrusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Gordan?
I'll be voting for question 1, voting against question 2. Question 1 restores a right that was previously provided to the citizens of the state. The Supreme Court, in essence, took that right away. I'm a little concerned that what we're doing is we're saying now we're going to give those taxpayers the right to go back to court, and basically putting that responsibility back in the court again. But I believe, and Josh has said, well, geez, it's going to bring on a flurry of cases. I don't believe it is. I know we're more litigious today than we used to be. People tend to go to court to settle their differences. And I can see that there might be some at first, but I know the courts well enough to know that the judges are going to sort that out pretty quickly. And it isn't about whether or not you spent how you spent the funds. The question is really whether or not you did it legally, and that's the narrow issue in those particular cases. So I'm in favor of question 1. Question 2, it was proposed by Neil Kirk, and when I was in the legislature, I did legislation with Neil Kirk because he's a big privacy advocate, and I felt that people's privacy should be protected. So I've always been pretty supportive. But in this particular case with this constitutional amendment, first of all, it applies just to information, and it really doesn't define what information is. And so you had privacy with regard to information. I was on the other night on 60 Minutes, it was interesting. They were solving all of these closed cases with DNA that they got. I don't know if anybody saw 60 Minutes, but with the DNA that they were able to retrieve, the government was able to retrieve, and they were solving a bunch of cold cases, including one here in New Hampshire. Well, would that preclude the government from getting that information? I don't know. I think the question is too vague, and I'm going to be voting against it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So our time has also come to a close. I'm going to ask you each to do a 1-minute closing statement. And we are going to start with candidate Gordan.
Okay. Well, just in terms of running for the House of Representatives, I ran for the House back in 1992. That was the very first time I served 1 term before going in the Senate. And I can tell you that it was a great honor. And I can remember the very first day going there to getting sworn in, walking up the steps, walking into the Hall of Flags and seeing the 12th Regiment flags there, which were the people that served in the Civil War from this area. And what an honor, a privilege. And it was a privilege every day I walked in that State House. And it would be a privilege to be able to represent the 5 towns in District 9. I'm a Republican. I believe in conservative issues, but frankly, I'm not partisan. And my biggest issue is making sure that the people in my district are well served and that they're well served by their state government, and I'll make sure that that happens if you elect me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Candidate Sivalingam.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you all tonight, and I look forward to hopefully having the honor and the privilege to serve the residents, the citizens of Ashland, Alexandria, Bristol, Bridgewater, and Grafton. I'd like to say that I hope that I get to work with Mr. Adjutant on the Medicaid expansion supplementation plan. I think it's a really brilliant proposal. And November 6th is our time for greatness. Serve people, not power. Vote Sivalingam. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Darrow.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying I'm asking for your vote on November 6th, and I believe that it's been an honor. It's been an honor to go to Concord and serve you. I'm a Republican. I believe in limited government, but I also believe in my constituents, and I feel that it's best to represent their best interests, and I've done my best over the past 4 years to do just that. And I've done that in many ways. I've done that in my service to my community. I've done that by being a selectman. I've done that by being part of a nonprofit of which I'm president, and that is to be part of the Cardigan Highlanders, and we go up and we clear the trails on Cardigan. And if you talk to anybody, those west and south trails are the best maintained trails in the state, and that's how I envision my work in Concord. I want to clear the trails and make sure that they drain properly and my constituents are taken care of. So once again, thank you for having me here, and I appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much. Candidate Adjutant.
I want to thank everybody for being here, everybody on the panel, Mr. Darrow. I was born in New Hampshire. I grew up in the Newfound area, went to Bridgewater Hebron Village School, Newfound Memorial Middle School, and every day I'm real proud that I get to drive past my alumni Newfound Regional High School and see one of our signs on somebody's lawn across the road. Aside from time as a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, I've been in New Hampshire my whole life. And I grew up in the Newfound community, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very glad to have grown up in a community where I came through the community center with Dan and Matt as my mentors. I don't think that we necessarily need to solve the issues next year as Democrats or Republicans. In fact, I didn't realize that half my friends were Republicans until I started this. I can make the voters in Grafton 17 one solemn pledge, and I say this as somebody that wants Newfound to be as close to Mayberry as possible. It is not my intention, and I will not support anything in Concord that makes it more difficult to grow or to afford to live in the community, where you can get ghillies, after rec soccer on Saturday and go sledding by the dump. So I'm Josh Adjutant, and I'd really appreciate your vote on November 6th.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you all for being with us tonight. We really appreciate that and your service to your New Hampshire communities. Again, I'm Sarah Holland. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks to our audience here in the station and to Pemmy Baker Television and our interns from Plymouth State. It's been a great event, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you.